Welcome to Unmasked, where we take off the filters and get real about faith, failure, and finding freedom. I'm your host, Wesley Farnsworth, a dad, veteran, author, and a man who's learned that God does his best work in the middle of our mess. Each episode will have honest conversations with people who've walked through addiction, pain, or doubt, and with pastors, leaders, and everyday believers who are learning to live and lead authentically. So take a breath, pull up a chair, and let's get real. This is Unmasked. Today on Unmasked, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Andrea, and I was able and privileged to meet her through Celebrate Recovery. And man, she has a powerful testimony. She shared it for the first time this past week. And when I've heard it, I've said, I have this podcast and I think other people would really connect with it or get something from it. Would you be willing to share? And without missing a beat, she said, absolutely. And so, Andrea, thank you so much for being with us here and sharing your testimony on this recording for the listeners. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and turn the floor over. And Andrea?
My name is Andrea, and I'm a child of God who has struggled with chemical dependency, codependency, promiscuity, and insecurity. Currently, I struggle with anger, PTSD, OCD, and a fear of public speaking. I was born to a single mom. I never knew my biological father since my mom always told me there were 3 possible men that could be my father. I was 35 years old when I discovered who my biological father was. It wasn't until my mom passed away in 2019 that he reached out to me and has kept in contact. I have no desire to have any type of father-daughter relationship with him. Up until I was 4 years old, it was mom and me. She met up with an old schoolmate who was a single father with a 4-year-old son. At that point, my childhood changed forever. That's when the molestation and abuse began until I was 13 years old. All through my childhood, I endured mental, physical, and emotional abuse at the hands of my stepdad. I lived in a household consumed with domestic violence against my mom because of my stepdad, all due to his alcoholism. Before long, my younger brother was born. That's when the abuse began to happen more often. Since I wasn't his biological daughter, he would say things to justify the abuse. The one person in my life who I could trust and would believe me was my grandma. I told her everything that happened to me each time. She would write it down in a book. Off and on throughout my childhood, my grandparents would take me from my mom since my mom said I was the problem child. She couldn't handle me any longer. Then tragedy struck our family. The home we lived in caught on fire due to faulty wiring. We lost all of our possessions. Thanks to the many blessings of donations from family and my grandparents, we had a new home. Grandma and Grandpa bought Mom a double-wide trailer in a nice trailer park. The kids in school referred to me as trailer trash, on top of the many other hurtful names they called me. I endured a great deal of bullying in school that lowered my self-esteem, and I had very few people I interacted with. I also developed social avoidance and became isolated. The abuse continued until I was 13 years old. That's when my mom came home to find my stepfather was gone along with the checkbook. It was the last time he ever molested me. My mom finally listened to my grandma and heard how I was hurt through the years. The result was that my mom had my stepdad arrested. They got married later so my brother could still have visits with his father. And that is when I went to live with my grandparents, since my grandpa's health was going downhill due to his cancer. Before long, my grandpa was placed in hospice care and ended up passing away. After Grandpa died, I stayed with my grandma while my mom and the 2 boys lived down the street in her trailer. Even though they were married, my mom and stepdad couldn't live together due to his offense. Instead, my stepdad lived at my grandma's old house and was able to see my younger brother when supervised by my mom. Living with my grandma, I felt safe for the most part. Unfortunately, my safety became compromised, and I was raped when I was 14 years old. From that point, my life was never the same. I was an honor student throughout high school. I began skipping classes in ninth grade. I dabbled in marijuana and alcohol. I became promiscuous. After graduation, I chose to work before going to college. I began attending a local college, but later withdrew so I could continue working to save money. It was at my job that I met the man who would eventually become the father of my children, my husband, and later on, my best friend and papa to our grandson. At first, we didn't like each other. He was an irritation, a daily pain, and now he's a thorn in my side to this day. Coincidence would have it that his sister lived near me, and I spent many days at her house with her two boys, and at times to babysit them. My friend, his sister, asked if she could set me up on a blind date with her brother. When I arrived at her house to meet the blind date, it turned out to be the man that I despise. She introduced us, and we both quickly spoke up. We already knew each other from work. To my surprise, I just accepted a blind date with her older brother, my former coworker. Eventually, we became a couple, and I soon discovered that I was pregnant. I was already on my own since my mom had kicked me out of my grandma's house because of my refusal to bow down to her every demand and control and not staying home. Finding out that I was pregnant was both scary and happy time all at once. I was tearful when telling my boyfriend since he was in jail, but he was ecstatic at finding out the news of our baby arriving. I feared being a single parent since my boyfriend was on probation and in jail on the violation, and I was only 19 and living with a roommate. It was the first time my mom would be there for me during my pregnancy and when the baby was born. My pregnancy was developing as expected, and we were prepared for baby girl's arrival. It was at the next doctor's visit that the ultrasound showed abnormalities. I was referred to Iowa City for additional testing. As young first-time parents, we made the most heartbreaking decision of our lives. We were told it would be a decision to save my life due to the known risk since the baby may not be delivered as scheduled. At this point, I stopped believing there was a God. I thought if there was a God, then why was he taking my baby away from me? I wondered if I was being punished for not being a good enough daughter, granddaughter, sister, or friend, or what I didn't know. It turned out that my baby was stillborn. We had her blessed by the chaplain in the hospital. Being 4 months premature, she wasn't strong enough to survive. I blamed myself for so long, thinking it was my fault and that I must have done something wrong for this to have happened. I went into a deep depression after being told there was a 30 to 50% chance of being able to get pregnant again and to carry full term. I had so much resentment or heartache toward God and other moms. Why could they have their babies, yet he took mine? At this point, I had given up thinking that there was a God again. A few months later, I discovered once again I was pregnant. Mixed emotions filled my heart as I thought there would be another punishment from God, another one of my children for him to rip away from me, leaving me broken and destroyed. I thought I could handle another. I thought I couldn't handle another loss. Each passing month, the baby kept growing. Each doctor's appointment provided more ease, joy, and excitement. I thought maybe there was a God. Maybe he was hearing my prayers. Maybe I wasn't being punished. I found out that I was having a boy, a firecracker baby. My boyfriend and I were elated. Before long, the most beautiful of God's greatest gifts was born. My son was a rainbow baby miracle. He gives me so much joy and happiness. As his mom, my whole life centers around him. With his dad going in and out of jail during those first 5 years, I was all my son had. It was my job to protect and keep him safe. I did my best as a single mom. I would take my son to see his dad when I could. By the time my son was 3 years old, his dad was in Fort Madison. That was when my life took a drastic turn, and I never knew how much it would hurt those around me. This is when I was introduced to the white demon of death, or as most know it, meth. It was through an acquaintance that I started using meth and got hooked. I thought I discovered a new set of friends. I was vulnerable and a follower looking to fit in. That is when my life of crime began. At first, I was never caught or arrested. When supplies were needed, I was called upon to go get what was needed. I thought of myself as a functioning addict. I was working a full-time job, going to school, getting married, and being a mom. I thought I was hiding my addiction from my family and close friends. My state of mind led me to believe that I controlled my addiction. It didn't control me. I believed I was using on a casual basis, but that was the furthest from only the truth. I didn't realize my family knew my addiction, even though I was trying to hide it. 4 years later, my life fell apart. After being together for 18 years and married for 3 years, my marriage was in shambles. There was no reconciliation as underlying circumstances kept that from happening. I filed for a divorce. Having been hurt so much in the past, I thought this was just another punishment from God. It was something else that I found hate in my heart for. I was at a loss to numb my pain. My addiction went into overdrive. I was allowing my son at 14 years old to smoke marijuana and drink alcohol. As an addict, I was an enabler to my child as well. What kind of mom had I turned into? He was under my supervision, so I didn't think there was any harm in it. I became promiscuous again. I would get high and party with my friends when my son went to his dad's house, or I'd wait till he went to bed and then party. Soon I moved to another town, which kept me sober since we would only drive the hour back and forth to Waterloo to see family. Before long, both of us were homesick, so we moved back into my mom's house, which was my downfall. Seeing only friends and going back to my old stomping grounds found me making up excuses to not go back to mom. I knew my son was okay and well taken care of. I found myself staying out more and more and getting wrapped up in a life of addiction that I walked away from those few months earlier. Soon I was involved with friends who had wrong motives and became very promiscuous. I believed I was hiding these things from my son and family, but my son was very smart and knew I was using again. As time went on, living with my mom and brother wasn't easy. Even though I was working, making car payments, caring for my son, and paying rent, I felt like a prisoner as well as a child. My younger brother treated me like a prisoner. My mom treated me like a child with curfews, check-ins, permission to leave, and having to tell her where my whereabouts. I stayed away more and more. I even tried to fake being kidnapped while running around with a friend. I was located far away in another county and was in such bad shape that I was taken to the local hospital for treatment. When being questioned by law enforcement, I didn't even know where or who I was. I was transferred to another facility for detox. Soon I was calling into work more and more, distancing myself farther from my family and my son. I was putting my addiction above all else. Eventually, I developed a new male relationship and we began committing crimes to feed our drug habit. I was stealing jewelry from my mom, pawning possessions, and writing bad checks, as well as using my mom's bank account. My boyfriend ended up going to jail, and I was on a downward spiral of self-destruction. DHS got involved, and my son's father returned to Iowa to care for my son. I chose to do what was in my son's best interest, which was to sign care and custody over to his dad. I no longer had control of my addiction. It had totally consumed me. Although I was allowed supervised visits with my son, those visits were few and far between, and finding authorized transportation to bring my son to see me proved nerve-wracking. While having to follow the DHS plan for compliance and visits, I still didn't stay sober. Continuing to use was the only solace from my pain. I could stay numb and not have to think about what was going on around me. Instead, I could distance myself and isolate and enjoy my own perfect world. My addiction and promiscuity was out of control, and I began selling myself to get my next fix. I kept telling my son I was staying sober, but he knew better. My lies broke the bond between us that I never thought would happen. Before long, I was hospitalized for drug detox and a psychiatric hold for an attempted overdose. My family got a court order for hospitalization due to my paranoia and addiction. My life was at its lowest, in shambles. Not only was I losing my son, I lost my home and I had nowhere to go. My heart was completely shattered the day I watched my son and his dad drive away, knowing that would be the last time that I could see him until he turned 18, all due to my choices. I was arrested a few days before my birthday due to my addiction. A warrant was issued and I was jailed and sent to prison on a 5-year sentence. While in the county jail, I opened the Bible for the first time since I was a kid. I was sitting in my cell with tears rolling down my cheek. I opened the Bible, and to my surprise, the first verse that it opened to was Philippians 4:13. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. I didn't know what that verse meant until I signed up for a Bible study and the Sunday church service. I figured, why not? It will just be a way to get out of my cell. But what I got from that Bible study and Sunday service was nothing less than eye-opening. I went back to my cell, dropped to my knees, and cried. I asked God to give me strength and willpower to fight my addiction, serve my time, and guide me to rebuild a relationship with my son. I attended NA meetings, church, and Bible study, all while keeping a line of communication with my son. While in Mitchellville Women's Prison, I joined a group called Women of the Well, a faith-based ministry within the walls of the women's prison. It helps women with hurts and hang-ups as they transition back into the community. It was in this group that I received my first Life Recovery Bible. God carried me through the next 8 months of prison. And when I entered the Women's Center, I did my programming, community service, attended Bible study, and work. While in the Women's Center, I went to my first church service at a nearby church. I attended every Sunday. Then I found out about Celebrate Recovery. I attended every Sunday. Then I found out about Celebrate Recovery while in the Women's Center. I thought, what could it hurt to add another program to help in my recovery and walk with Christ? That there was a van that came each week to pick up the ladies. As I began to attend Celebrate Recovery, I met some amazing people who connected with me and are still my lifetime family. These ladies became my sponsor, accountability partner, and sisters in Christ. They took a chance on me no matter what mistakes or downfalls I had, and have continued to stand by my side to this day. After my discharge from the Women's Center, I continued attending CR and lived with my mom again. It was a process to earn her trust back. However, over time, our relationship as mother and daughter became strained once again. I continued to follow my parole discharge plan as required, and after being out of prison, I was discharged off parole 4 years early. With good behavior and all requirements met, my PO approved me for release. I was ecstatic, as was my mom. I called my son immediately to tell him the good news, even though he was 1,300 miles away. He was very proud of me. The next milestone was reuniting with my son. To have him back in my arms after almost 3 years apart was going to make my sobriety and hard work worth it. To hear his voice on the phone or on FaceTime wouldn't be the same as holding him in my arms. However, I wasn't being honest about staying sober. I began to dabble here and there, hiding my use from my mom. I was using to take the edge off all the stress while still attending CR. Then my son finally came home for good. I stopped using and remained sober once again, and before long, my son was back in my arms. That day was the most crying I had done since he was born. I couldn't stop hugging him. This was finally the moment I had waited for to rebuild our bond as mom and son. I couldn't take back the last 3 years, but I would do everything in my power to make up for it. All I was going well until Mother's Day. It was the worst. My mom threw me out when we got into an argument and I was high. My son gave me a hug, said Happy Mother's Day, and walked out. I followed and could only see the car drive away. It was then that I realized I had let him down. I went on a 5-day binge and got thrown out onto the street and ended up in detox. Once again, someone I thought was a friend took me in, but was treating me like a child. When I wouldn't comply with demands, I was thrown out once again. I was on the street, nowhere to go. I sat on the curb crying and asked God to take me out of this never ending nightmare. I had put myself into it. I had just reached 60 days of sobriety, yet my son nor anyone in my family wanted anything to do with me. I couldn't blame them since I had caused much pain and hurt. God heard my cries, and my cousin, who I'd been estranged from and was also in recovery, opened her door and took me in. She became the only person who gave me strength to stay sober. Since then, God has transformed my life tremendously. By the grace of God, the chains of my addiction to meth have been broken. I gave up my promiscuous lifestyle, and I've gained a healthier and stronger bond with my son and my daughter-in-law. Today, I have been sober 7 years and 6 months. The day I said enough was enough, I made a choice to walk away from the one thing that had destroyed my life for so long. Now I'm the proud grandma of 2 beautiful, very active toddler grandsons. The relationship with my son has been restored, and our bond gets stronger daily. I have a very beautiful daughter-in-law. The sibling relationship with my brother is getting better. After attending Celebrate Recovery and doing a step study, I began to see the healing from my abuse, codependency, and so much more. The things that have been hidden for so many years have finally been brought into the light. It's more than a program. It's a way of life, and it works. In the step study, the lesson that sticks out to me the most is forgiveness. Based upon Principle 6, evaluate all my relationships and offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me. Make amends for harm I've done to others, except when to do so would harm them or others. I've learned that forgiveness is essential in recovery. Always remember, forgiving someone doesn't mean you excuse or condone actions or behaviors. It's about releasing the power they have over you. By doing this allows the possibility of healing relationships and moving forward in your recovery. Keep in mind, forgiveness is the process that involves the willingness to forgive and can be the first step towards healing and freedom. Unfortunately, my mom passed away 3 months prior to my 1-year anniversary of sobriety. I know she's proud of me each and every day. Since being on this recovery journey, I have become a leader in my Celebrate Recovery group. I also co-lead a step study, and I recommitted my life to Christ on July 27th, 2025. Being a member of my local church, God plays a big part in my life. Without my faith, which gives me the needed willpower, perseverance, and the unconditional love and support of my family, as well as my CR sisters and brothers, I don't know where I'd be. Philippians 4:13 says, "For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength." This will forever be my life verse. My hope and prayer is that my story will touch people who are on their journey of recovery. I'm living evidence that recovery is possible by the power of God's grace. Celebrate Recovery can help anyone with hurts, hangups, and habits. Thank you for listening. and God bless.
Wow, Andrea, what a story. You have truly been through a lot, and it is just so powerful to hear where you've been and where God has brought you now. And I'm so appreciative of you coming on and sharing your story. What would you tell the listeners? Maybe there's a listener out there that is dealing with a struggle with it when it comes to forgiving. They can't forgive themselves for something that they've done, and that's holding them back from walking in the freedom. What advice would you give that person to be able to allow themselves to forgive themselves?
Every day is a struggle. It has taken me a long while to be able to let go and forgive myself. In order to recover and be free, you can never forget, but you can forgive. You'll always have that mindset, but always keep a positive mindset. You can let go and let God. And that's what I always preach every day. Let go, let God. And that is what Philippians 4:13 is all about, is letting go, letting God.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great verse to live by. Let go and let God. There's a lot of things that we can't control, and luckily enough, we serve the one that can, and we just got to put our trust in Him. It's good stuff. Well, Andrea, again, thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share your testimony. Listeners, I hope that you were able to get something from this testimony, and I encourage you to go back and listen again and share it with somebody that you think could benefit from it, because there's just so much in this testimony to unpack, the things that she's gone through, and it's so powerful. And so, Andrea, once again, thank you very much. Well, thanks for joining me today on Unmasked. If this episode encouraged you, would you take a moment to follow, rate, and share it with somebody who you think could benefit from hearing it? For more encouragement and information on having me speak at your church or events and my coaching services, visit wesleyfarnsworth.com. And don't forget to connect with me on social media. Until next time, remember that grace is greater than your past, and freedom begins when we all live unmasked. God bless you. And